Hi, everyone, and welcome to another session of academic research logs. Today, we are looking at quantitative research. So, when researchers are using quantitative methods, it is typical for them to start with an hypothesis or a set of hypotheses that they want to test. And what that is that they have a set of predictions or a couple of different explanations or possible outcomes that they want to test using an experiment. So often what the researcher would do is the design will include methods that will test those hypotheses using statistics or numbers. And quantitative research involves collecting and analyzing numerical data. So it is used to understand a particular phenomenon. You're looking at patterns and relationships. It focuses on measuring variables and it relies heavily on statistical analysis, which is what we would often use to draw conclusions. This type of research, again, is often structured. He has a structured methodological approach where you can use surveys, experiments, or observational studies to gather data from large sample size or large group of people. The common methods that are used for collecting quantitative data is you can have observational studies where there is a observation where the researchers observes and they record behaviors or they record patterns. There is it, and it's in a systematic approach as well. And they might also use experiments, which is often in a setting that is quite tightly controlled. And what they do in this kind of setting is that they test, like I was saying, the hypothesis that I was talking about. They test and they try to observe if there is any cause and effect or if there's any relationship between some of the things that they're trying to investigate. You might also have the use of questionnaires and surveys where you get again structured um, set of questions, and what they use this for is that they try to gather as much data as they can from a large number of participants. So it could be, for example, you go into say there is data that's been collected on a particular group of people already that's sitting somewhere, and you have researchers who come along and say, oh, actually I can make use of this data, it's already there, we can make sense of it, we can analyze it, and we can also interpret the data as well. It's been talking about the fact that it is quite structured, so it is a structured approach. When we're talking about quantitative research as well, I think it's important that we think about some of the steps that are involved when you're doing a quantitative research. Like any other research, again, your research question has to be something that's feasible, that's doable. And I've done a video as well where I talk about how to formulate a good research question. It's important that you actually spell out the problem. You want to define exactly what the problem is. What are you trying to investigate? And you also want to have your objectives, your aims, your hypothesis. You want to have them ready as well, just so that you can have that structure in place before you begin to do your investigation. When you're designing the study, you need to make sure that you know what your methodologies are. What are your variables? And when we're talking about variables here, what I mean by variable is anything that you can measure. So, for example, you can measure your height, your weight, and you would often see things being talked about as independent or dependent variable. You need to know how you're going to collect your data. Like I was saying, do you want to use surveys? Do you want to use questionnaires? Are you trying to use an experiment? Are you going to be observing people? Are you going to be using sampling techniques to represent maybe say a subset of a particular population. So again, you need to think about all of these things as you design your study. It helps to also increase your validity of the data collection, because again, that's another important aspect. Rigor is really important. You want to make sure that your study is reliable and it is valid as well. When you're talking about data collection and analysis, you also want to plan how you're going to gather information using the type of method that you've chosen, the statistical techniques that you're going to use to interpret your data and to come to a conclusion. And lastly, again, you want to be able to present your findings. How are you going to present your findings? Maybe through graphs, tables. Again, all of those things you need to give some thought to, and you need to think about. So quantitative data is often analyzed using different statistical methods. And the main thing that you're trying to get is you want to identify the relationships between the variables that you're looking at. You want to look at the trends, the patterns. But some of the common statistical analysis that you find is we've got the inferential statistics, we've got the descriptive statistics where you looking at your mean, median, mode. So how often is something occurring? What so you can look at the average age of your population. You can use simple descriptive statistics to look at things like that. Inferential statistics, correlation analysis. Again, you can use your correlation analysis to determine relationships, like I was saying, between the variables that you've got. You've got different ways and different methods. It just depends on what answers your questions best. So again, it's important that we look at some of the advantages when we're talking about quantitative research. Findings can be generalized because it involves a large sample size, and because of that, it means that findings often will be applicable and can be applied to larger population. Because it's quite structured as well and there is objectivity, it reduces the tendency to have bias because the methodologies are often structured. In terms of rigor as well, there is statistical rigor, because it allows you to be able to precisely analyze and have those numerical interpretation. So again, there are advantages to using your quantitative research, especially because it is one that stands for ensuring consistency of measurement. And I think it's also important to think about some of the limitations if you're going to be using quantitative research. Some of the things that you might have to kind of ponder about is that you might not often get the depth that comes with your qualitative research. You might not have background and those contextual information that you can get in your qualitative method and approach. So again, so there's some of the things that you need to think about. And it also, because you're often relying on hypotheses and limited theories, and you've got your predictions that you want to follow, it might limit your ability to kind of explore new things and different things. Um, Again, when you're looking at quantitative research, it doesn't really give room for you to explain human behaviors, human experiences, which can be complex, and you can't really capture that when you are doing quantitative research. So, in conclusion, quantitative research it is valuable for if you're looking at a particular phenomenon in a structured, in a numerical way. It can help to provide insight into relationships, predictions, and patterns within a particular population. And my takeaway is this: I know sometimes people talk about one method or one approach being better than the other. At the end of the day, you have to think about what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to investigate, and that should be what will guide you as to what approach you choose. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all again in the next one. Bye.